Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode here on the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm being joined by a very, very special guest today. Aimee is here with us. Hello, Aimee. How are you doing?
Hi, Danny. It's lovely to hear your voice.
Yes, you too. I know it feels like we've heard each other's voice a lot over the last few months as you just finished the Break Free from Sugar program. And I knew as soon as the program ended, well, even as we were going through it, I knew that your story needed to be shared and the transformation that you went through after, a lifetime, which you're going to share your story, but, this lifetime of struggle that you've had with sugar and with yourself, and just seeing the transformations that happened for you in just 10 weeks. And obviously will continue to happen this year. I just knew that I had to invite you here on the podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know it's not easy to come on and share your story and be vulnerable and open. And, I am so grateful that you're willing to do that. And I know all the women listening to this are really going to resonate with what you've been through. And it feels really important to have you here. So thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Jenny. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Yes, me too. I'm excited I always just love our conversations and chat. So everybody listening, you're just along for the ride here as we're learning about Aimee's story here and what really made the difference for her. So I think a good place to start, Aimee, and I know this is kind of hard because you've got a whole lifetime of stories and experiences, right? But if you could share a little bit about, your story with sugar, with yourself, with just your health, before we met, before you did the Break Free from Sugar program, like what was going on with your relationship with food? How did you feel every day? And any other pieces that you want to share about your history and your story would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my relationship with food is a really difficult one. I felt it was always the go-to thing that I could really come to whenever I was bored or sad or angry or frustrated or frightened or God knows it, celebrating something. There was always an excuse for me to go there. And I really, really didn't like what the relationship looked like by the time I contacted you. It was just out of control because I always had an excuse to be eating it constantly. So I was looking for podcasts that could help me. And I had been through 4 breaking free from binging. It wasn't just sugar, but it was binging in general courses that had really been great for some people, but just didn't work for me. I was edging my way a little bit closer to breaking free from binging, but never quite there. Something would set me off and I would be right back to where I started. And I was literally out of options by the time I found your podcast. And I thought, I wonder if sugar could be the thing. Is that possibly the gateway drug that is setting me off? And could I live without it? And that's where this all started.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So yeah, you mentioned having done a couple other programs, and I think women all over the world can relate to that story, right? Of having tried all these things and it's not working and it just doesn't work for me. Like what would you say has been like the biggest sort of missing piece, maybe from those other programs or from, anything else that you've tried over your life? Why do you think they didn't work for you is the question.
When I joined this program, there was a private community to lean on the whole time for the entire 10 weeks that we were together. And you were on calls with us every week, sometimes more than once. It didn't just keep me accountable, it made me feel human. And that was that human touch that made me feel like, I think I can come home here. I think I can be myself here. And I think I can say the most embarrassing things you could possibly imagine with this sugar addiction, and didn't feel judged. And it was really great. I remember towards the very end, one of the ladies came in saying that she had not adhered to the program at all, and she found it really difficult. But she did come in at the end. She didn't just give up on week 10. She came in and she expressed her frustration. She said she doesn't understand why she's behind everybody else's schedule. But she still came in and you made her feel so welcome. And I thought, if I were in her shoes, I'd be right back for the next round. That was really special. So that strong sense of community and the digging deep, that combination seems to be like the magical 2-point factor that really worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad. I mean, that makes me obviously very happy in what I've created and what I'm, doing here with my clients and my programs. And it's so beautiful to hear the feedback that it's working and that's really landing. Is that, I feel like as women, right, we've you know, we've all been in the wrong types of communities. We've all been in these environments where we're feeling judged, or the shame that we carry around our body and around our eating habits. And, you know, what if we were in this safe space where, you know, we weren't judged and we could be ourselves and actually explore who we truly are, you know? And I've seen you do that in a big way, and really stepping into your power, right? And owning not only your new job you took on, like there was a lot going on in your life, you know, at the same time as this program, and just watching you really embody that and really connect with that, and to explore and be curious about who is Aimee and how does this new Aimee handle life and difficult things without needing to binge on sugar, right? So how do you think that you navigated that? I mean, obviously the community was a really important aspect, and my coaching and just the setup of everything we were doing, but I know that you were going through some really stressful stuff. Let's just say it, right? It was very stressful. And the old Aimee would have just been binging on sour keys like the first time we talked, right?
That's right.
I remember
a big bag
that.
of them, actually. Yeah. It was like lighting up a cigarette and say, Danny, I really want to give up smoking, and keep dragging on the cigarette as we were having the conversation.
Yeah.
No, I remember what did help was I got a new job around the same time that I started the program. And one of my big problems with sugar is that when I eat it, it doesn't just give me a food hangover, which seems to be so prevalent when we indulge. It does so much more than that, that it takes away so much more than that. So it absolutely kills my immune system. Within a week, I know I'll start to feel like I have a cold, and within 2 weeks, I'll be battling some kind of cold. It would take about 3 hours of indulging to create a 3-week recovery effect. And I just thought, I can't keep doing that. So when my new job started, my boss, who I love dearly, entrusted me to a very difficult job. And I knew that if I kept on doing what I was doing, I wouldn't be able to do the job at all. So I wanted to show up for him as much as I wanted to show up for me, but I needed this help too. So I did. I went cold turkey with the sugar, and I did very, very well for a while. But all through, Halloween, it was great. But then after that, I started to indulge a little bit more again. And that's when things really started to shift. I don't know why, but we can talk about that in a minute. It's just amazing how things changed for me in that progress.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about that shift. What did you notice? And when you say shift, what do you mean? Like, what changed for you there?
The first thing that I stopped doing, and I still haven't done, is whenever I have an urge, the first thing I would do is just drive down to the shops or to a pharmacy and just load up on all the junk I could and just say, just this once, just this last supper, and go for it, just have a horrible binge. And then the next day, just recover. And then 3 days later, do it all over again. So that stopped completely. I stopped getting in the car and seeking it out. That seems strange to me because this is the closest I've ever come to not binging. But the second thing that was really strange was I was able to stop myself a lot sooner, because mid-binge or mid-indulgence, I want to call it indulgence more than binge now because it doesn't get that deep, I just felt so disappointed when I was eating what I was eating. My normal path forward would have been, gosh, I really, really need this relief. I just need to stop thinking. I need to get off the world, and I really need this relief. But a couple of bites in, I'd get absolutely nothing, just no return for my investment, as it were. And the disappointment nearly killed me. So I'm prone to exaggeration. But yes, I thought, there's nothing here. There's no rush anymore. So the more I realized that whenever I would indulge again, the more I caught myself before I'd start binging. This is now my current situation, and say, it's not going to give me anything. It's supposed to give me some pressure relief. It's supposed to give me some sort of joy, even if it's just for 5 minutes, even if it costs me 3 weeks of my health. It's supposed to give me something, and now it gives me nothing. So I'm catching myself before the binge saying, I'm not going to get anything out of it. It's very difficult to believe, but that is the truth, because we've tried it over and over again and it just doesn't work anymore. So that's the shift that occurred. And I don't know if it's because of all of the conversations we had in the 10 weeks, but something big shifted in that time we were together.
Yeah. And I saw that. I remember witnessing that shift, and it was really, really neat to see you show up on one call struggling in one way, and then show up on the next call and say, you know what, that's gone now. What happened? Like something happened, like the switch flipped, right?
I still haven't figured out the what happened part. What did happen? Or was my love of it from before purely psychological? I don't know, but I'm not getting anything out of it. And the disappointment is prevalent. And I thought, I'm going to have to find my thrill somewhere else, or just sit still and just let that pass. Those are two options.
Yeah. And you're learning what you're doing here is learning to that new pathway, that new, repatterning that old way of being of this is the way that I escape, or this is the way that I get joy, or this is the way that, I'm going to get that thing that I'm looking for from the sugar, and how it's not there anymore. So you're retraining your brain to realize like, that's not the way I get that anymore. So it's really neat. Obviously, physically, your body is showing up to support you with that. Right. And to prove to you, right, like, this isn't the same tool that it used to be, Aimee, right? Like this doesn't work anymore. Yeah. We're going to have to find new, actually supportive, tools and ways to work through our emotions and get support and, let our emotions be heard and all that stuff. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So I'm curious if you're open to sharing, obviously, as you know, intimately, in the program, we dive into so many different inner pieces and root causes, and really getting into like our foundation around what's driving us, to eat sugar or to binge on food. What would you say for you were the biggest like aha moments, or the biggest pieces that were personally going on for you? We talked about a lot of different things, and different pieces really resonate with different women. So I'm curious for you, what were the big areas that you believe were at the root of your, or still are, as you're working towards fully healing them, your addictive patterns with food?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about my stressors around 2020. So in 2020, my husband and I separated, and we ultimately got divorced. Then the pandemic emerged worldwide, and then my oldest son went to college. And then my 2 dogs died. So we went from a household of 6 people to a household of just me and my younger son, who I see half of the time. So I think a big part of it was the absolute shock of everything that I knew up to that point becoming another reality entirely. And ultimately, I'm very grateful for it. I have stepped into my power and all of these wonderful things had happened. But for a while, the entire environment felt completely surreal. My house was empty, and I just could not come to grips with how many changes were occurring in my life. So that was 2020. But your question was, how did this all start? I'd imagine it started decades ago. I just don't remember that point where, I don't know, it could have been anything. Perhaps my parents were fighting at some point, and I decided the best possible option was to go and find something sweet and eat that. My parents, in their wisdom, raised us to believe that sugar was very bad for you, and they were absolutely right. But you try telling that to someone who's 7 or 8 around a peer group who's also having that kind of food, the first thing you're going to do is reach for more of it. So that's when I started to sneak it and hide it and hope that nobody would catch me eating this stuff. So it goes way, way back. I just don't remember the pivot point at which my brain started to say, this is good, get more of this, this will save your life, this will make you feel better. It must have started a long time ago. And it was always a thing that I went to, because I don't drink, I don't do all of the other things that, someone might go to relieve stress, as Gabor Mate might describe. It was always sugar for me. It was quick, it was easy, and it was legal. So why not go for that? So, but as I think about it, whenever stressors occur now, and there will always be something going on in your life, the urge is still there to reach for something. But instead of automatically reaching it, I imagine the aftermath of it before I have reached for the thing, saying, okay, I'll reach for the thing, I'll eat it, and then afterwards I won't feel any better, and I'll have 2 problems instead of 1. And it won't solve anything. It won't create the pressure relief that I'm looking for, and it won't give me the rush that I'm seeking. So what's the darn point? So I just don't do it anymore. But I'm not quite at a point where I have found substitutes or learned to completely relax, which is why I want to come back for another 10 weeks and work with you.
Yeah, which I'm so excited. Yeah, Aimee's going to join us for the next round, because it's so powerful when we're in that community, in that, in that way for a solid 10 weeks, and that commitment, and that every week, showing up for each other on Zoom. And I'm so excited to have you back. That's such a testament to how committed you are to your journey.
It was amazing. I mean, there were weeks when every week there was homework to do, which would have been very valuable had I actually done it, but I just didn't have the time. But you allowed us the space to say, just show up, be part of this community, and just show up. And I thought, well, I can do that much. Even if I'm driving in my car and I can't log in with my camera, I can listen. And boy, did that make a difference. Yeah, it was truly extraordinary.
Yeah, it's hard you're doing such a great job at it, but I know it's so hard to put into words. And some of the ladies listening might be like, yeah, I kind of understand that, but I don't quite get it. But it is that level of like, what you're doing in that moment and what I see when I ask participants and women who join that group to do that, to just show up, whether or not you've done your homework, is not only are we letting go of our perfectionism, our people-pleasing tendencies, we're getting to practice showing up for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And allowing ourselves to be imperfect and to just be there to listen in whatever capacity, you know, whether we've got makeup on or not, or we're driving with the camera off or not, right? You know, just being a part of community and connection in that vulnerable, safe space is where the healing happens. And this is one of the reasons that I don't do one-on-one coaching anymore. Like, these groups this is the way that we heal in community and connection. So I saw you do that, and it's so beautiful. And even like you were referencing that woman on the last call who showed up that was really struggling all along. You know, no matter how much we tried to help her, you know, she was going through her own journey, and to be met with compassion and learn how to be compassionate to ourselves when things maybe aren't going according to plan, or life has thrown something at us, you know. And I feel like a lot of women listening, or anyone who's thinking about coming and joining us in February for the next program, you know, thinking in like, well, that's the wrong time. I've got a trip planned, or I've just got a new job. Like, I think you're such a great testament to
I'm with
being
you.
able
Yeah,
to show up.
The timing was horrible. The timing was absolutely terrible. It would have been easier to quit, but actually, life always happens on its own terms, doesn't it? Something always comes up. And just having that permission just to log in for that 30 minutes or 1 hour just kept me engaged and joyful, and thought, okay, if I can do it, then everyone else can do it. And everyone else was doing it and doing their very best. Yeah, some people hadn't done their homework, some were behind, they were panicking, but they were always there, and they all left having got something out of this.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to witness, allowing ourselves that, like you said, permission to just be us and to show up and do our best. Right. Yeah. And like, one of the fun things, and I know we're kind of going on a sidetrack, but I feel like this is such a gift too, is, and I'm curious if this showed up for you in the group. What often happens, because this is how we're trained in society, right, is just to get into judgment mode, judging ourselves, right? Like, oh, that person has done all their homework and I haven't, or that person's, you know, she's breezing through the sugar detox portion and I'm in so much pain, right? Like this comparison game with, like, you know, someone else is better than me. And this whole internal dynamic that is just so toxic in our everyday life. Like, we as women are constantly comparing ourselves.
Yeah, Danny, this is my fifth journey, you know, so this is my fifth foray into dealing with binge eating, and I'm finally getting there. Maybe the other 4 courses brought me closer, perhaps, but it was my fifth one. So that lady that said, I'm just logging in for the first time and I feel way behind, and I immediately sent her that text that we can do when we're talking to one another, and I said, 2 years, 5 goes, you know, so don't beat yourself up. Yeah. If you're here for a reason. There's something about this you don't like.
Yeah. It's just such a beautiful opportunity to learn to drop that judgment, right? And the self-judgment, especially, because when we're judging others, we're really actually judging ourselves. And this is why, you know, what I've created, and I know that you picked up on this, right, is not a rigid program where you have to do everything. We also need to allow for some of that feminine energy of really doing what feels best to us, and, you know, creating a path, you know, through this inner work and through detoxing from sugar, and that really works for us individually. So, you know, there's no one way, right? And honoring that we are each exactly where we're meant to be on our own journey, whether it's where someone else is or not where somewhere else is, you know, it's really a chance to deepen into that self-confidence in a way, and, you know, really understanding and learning to love where we're at, and trust and surrender that, you know, we're doing the work that we're meant to do right now. And, you know, and it might take longer than someone else who's hasn't done 4 programs in the past, or, you know, those sorts of things. And that's okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So beautiful. So I know one of the questions that a lot of women, or one of the blocks or fears that a lot of women have before, you know, doing something like this for themselves, is this question of how hard is it really going to be? You know, I obviously share, you know, about the program that we go deep, and we're getting into some deep wounds and the emotions, and we're talking about trauma. We're talking about some of these deep pieces. And as well, detoxing from sugar for a minimum of 4 weeks. So, overall thinking about sort of the inner work piece a little bit separate, and then the actual detoxing from sugar piece, how hard did you find both of those, with the container of support, and, how was that actually the experiencing that for you?
I found it really hard at first. From a physical standpoint, when I was detoxing, I was in a lot of pain. And it's funny, when you're out of pain, you just can't remember what that felt like. But for about 3 weeks, every bone in my body hurt, including the back of my neck. So it did help to log in and just hear that this was normal. I thought, okay, thank God. No, I'm on track. That's a relief. But over time, it just got much easier. So what I really was aiming for, there is going to be a bit of white knuckling in the beginning. You are detoxing. You're doing without something that you've been having for a very long time. But over time, you're going to find that you slide into some weird sense of indifference around sugar. And that was the greatest level of success for me. When I came back to it, it wasn't that great. And when I stopped eating it, I was now indifferent. And that's the true litmus test. This is something that we talked about before. I remember receiving a gift from my boss at Christmas of lots of sugary treats. And as I was driving home, I was about to rip into them when I was at the stoplights. And I stopped immediately and thought, okay, does it have more control over me, or do I have more control over it? Could I truly be indifferent around this treat? And my answer was, no, I'm not feeling indifferent today. So it is not time to indulge just yet. And that was the biggest shift that occurred to me. It's all a matter of whether something has more control over you than you have over it. And I wasn't there yet. So I was able to put it away, but I had never stopped myself before and asked myself that question. And I thought, oh, this is very, very interesting. I wonder why the allure is still so strong. So I put it away and forgot about it. And then weeks later, I saw it again and I thought, it's interesting that that's still there. But I don't feel this massive draw towards eating it anymore. It just happens to be there and I can have it if I want. I'm relatively indifferent now. That was the biggest shift. To move from having to have some self-control to just not needing it anymore, because you don't need the self-control if you're that indifferent about something. It would be like asking a non-smoker if they really wanted to light up, they'd say, why would I? What would that mean to me? You. Nothing. Yeah. That's what it felt like. So at first, it is difficult at first, but over time you start to evolve into this new version of yourself where you stop becoming that interested in your habit.
Yeah, that's so powerful to hear you say. Because it's really important to acknowledge that, especially, I know you're talking a lot about your experience with actually detoxing, the physical symptoms that you had, but even doing some of the inner work. I mean, a lot of what we do, right? It can be difficult in the beginning. It's almost like learning a new skill or learning how to ride a bike, right? It's like we're learning how to really get into being inquisitive and speaking our truth and learning who we are and learning how to really, really step into our power, right? And find our voice and know that it matters and all of these beautiful things that we're doing. And it takes a little bit to get into that momentum. And then that's why we spend a good 4 weeks before we even go sugar-free, right? To really start building some of that momentum. So we have the tools and the groundwork before we remove our crutch, right? This thing that, you've been using for comfort and, stress relief and, whatever else that anyone listening to this has used it for. So yeah, it's really, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we don't, it's very important to me, right? That we're not making anything up here as we're having this conversation. I think there's a lot of, programs or people out there, promising that it's pain-free and, you're going to get fast results and all of this. And that's just not how we change or evolve. That's going to take some commitment and it's going to be challenging. And that's why we have the community set up the way we do, so that you can be supported in that. And I saw you go through that. I remember how difficult the body pain was for you, especially with other women who were feeling fine and they were feeling great. And you're sitting there going, why am I still in pain in week 3? What's wrong with me? What's going on with me? And, it's so supportive, as you notice, right? To have that, to keep you going. Cause this is what happens with most women doing this maybe on their own or in different groups without the right support, is they'll get to week 1 or 2 with pain or headaches or feeling gross because their body is detoxing and just give up. right? Because it's too hard, or they think it's not right. All those those self-sabotaging chatter can come in, and it's so easy to just sabotage, right? And just, well, forget it. I'm just going to eat sugar because this pain is too much. So to watch you stay committed to yourself, even though, 3 weeks in, you were still in pain, which is not that common, but it's definitely a piece, right? As your body was going through some major, major toxin release.
That's a big tipping point for me, actually, Danny. I'd almost forgotten, but before I joined your program, I did try going out on my own and just giving up sugar for a little while. And in week 1 and week 2, I was feeling so much better. In week 3, I got really, really sick. And I thought, we have an expression in Ireland, which is, I just threw all my toys out of the pram. You're just so mad, you're throwing the toys everywhere. Like, I'm doing all this work and I'm sick anyway. So I might as well have been eating a binge the size of Brazil, or something like that. And I did. And that was my breaking point. And then I went back to being even worse than before. So when I was 3 weeks into your program feeling just as bad, it was very useful to know that it was normal and to keep on going. I'd never kept on going before. So this was a new venture.
Yeah. It's amazing once we, and I sensed that as we were going through that together. I remember reminding you, right? Like, this is that, like, how it has to get hard before it gets easier, right? Like that old saying. It's like, I feel like you're at this new precipice, right? Where you've never been before. You're going in uncharted territory, right? Because we're doing things differently here. Because what we've been doing in the past isn't working. Right. So I remember reminding you, like, just wait a little bit longer. This is going to turn. Something is moving here for you. And it just happens to be taking a bit longer. And that's frustrating, but you're getting the lessons that you need in that. Right. And even building resiliency. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about pain, right? But it's here to teach us and to show us how resilient we are and how to support ourselves, and to find ways to really show up for ourselves, to comfort and support in that pain, right? There's a lot of wisdom in pain, which is another podcast, but just watching you do that and staying on track. And then all of a sudden it did shift.
It did. And I thought it never would. And I didn't believe you, but it did anyway, because I was there to keep logging in and keep coming to the calls. And then one day it was gone. I'd forgotten about it. We actually brought it up and I thought, oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yes, I'm out of it.
Just kind of like disappeared secretly, right? One day and you're like, oh, I forgot I was in pain for 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. So, where, I know you've talked a little bit about this, but I would love to sort of ask you again, because I know you mentioned you're going to come and continue this journey. And, this 10 weeks that we go through in the Break Free from Sugar program is such a powerful, kind of fast track to get started with a lot of this big healing and these inner pieces that need to shift, and rewiring and creating this new way of relating to ourselves and the world and food. But it's not the end, right? There's no promise here that at the end of 10 weeks, you're going to be all better and never have another challenge in your life again. Right. So I'm curious, where are you now? I mean, this has been probably about 12 or 13 weeks now since we started the program, because we just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. So at the time of recording this, where are you now with your health, right? And the health, not only of your body, your relationship to food and sugar, but also your relationship to yourself. What do you feel have been the biggest shifts, and just kind of what's going on for you today now?
I'm in a pretty good headspace. I have a lot more confidence than I did at the beginning, that if you can handle this, you can pretty much master yourself in anything. But in terms of why I'm coming back for another 10 weeks, I just haven't quite arrived yet. Now, by arrived, I mean there are certain foods that I'm still very dependent on as my sugar substitutes. So for example, I might still want potato chips or pizza or the stuff that's not great for me. But when I was doing the Breaking Free from Sugar program, I tended to lean on these as substitutes from time to time. And since I'm still, I talked about my litmus test earlier. Does it have more control over me than I have of it? The answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. And it's the sometimes yes that I still want to explore. That's what I mean when I say I haven't quite arrived. Why is this substitute so important? Why is it that I'm gravitating towards it in the absence of having something else to have, instead of making peace with having nothing at all, or just finding joy in some other area? I'm not quite there. So that's why I'm coming back for another 10 weeks. I'm a lot better compared to the very beginning of the program. I can easily bypass chocolate and a lot of the junk that I might have eaten before, but I feel like there's still work to do, which is why I'm coming back. Yeah, I have some more questions to explore.
Beautiful. Yeah. And you know that here's the truth, right? That we're never really done exploring and those questions, right? And it gets easier. And it sounds like, you know, and I know this, right? You've created such a foundation for yourself. And now you're wanting to just get more nuanced, right? Now it's just kind of that like next phase, that next level of diving deeper, right? And continuing to uncover and turn over those rocks and discover what's there and have those conversations with those parts of your subconscious around, you know, really, really shifting into this new version of Aimee, right? And how new Aimee relates to food without guilt, without the shame, and without the need, you know, having that indifference become like fully embodied into like who you are, right? And being indifferent, right? And being back in the driver's seat.
You're right. And there's still a part of me that believes there's nothing else. So there's two versions of me that's showing up. The newer, more evolved version that says, of course, there's plenty of everything else. Or you could just relax and just know that it's okay for nothing else to substitute this thing that you really want. There's another part of me that says, nope, there's no substitute. We're still having this. So I'm in between two minds from time to time, especially in those times when there's a very strong emotional pull towards doing something that is not in my best interest.
Yeah.
It's a transition. It hasn't been an A to B point where you're standing on one rock and you jump on another one and you're done. It's more of an unfolding. It's very much a journey.
Yeah. And how do you feel about, or what thoughts come up for you about it being a journey?
Sometimes I wonder if the journey will ever be over. And I don't have any particularly strong feelings. I mean, the journey will be over when I'm dead. I'll be reorganizing somewhere. But in the meantime, I just wonder what else there is. There's a lot of joy in life, but we discussed this quite a bit. The reason I loved binging so much and the reason I still miss it from time to time is it's so immediate. The relief is so quick. I don't have to make a massive effort in order to find this level of joy. If it was something else, for example, going dancing or going out or choosing a new outfit or going shopping, there's still effort involved. But binges are so immediate and the relief is so fast. I think that's the thing that I tend to crave from time to time, just that immediate stepping off of the world. So it's a bit scary knowing that it is a journey, that I'll just have to relax around that, knowing that I won't get that immediate relief all the time. And that is going to take time for me to ease into.
Yeah. And a lot of the work that you're doing, if I can add to that, right, is understanding as well that, you know, as you heal these inner pieces, that need to escape something quickly diminishes, right? Like the urgency around, like, I need something quick, you know, and as you're building in, I know you're working on this, right? Building in those really beautiful practices in your day-to-day life of pausing and fueling yourself energetically, and really, you know, feeling more connected to yourself and to life, you know, those desires and needs for something quick, you know, become less immediate. And yes, your toolbox, it's always very helpful to have in your toolbox, you know, those quick go-to comforts, right? For when we feel like we need that comfort, right? Which is very, very normal. You know, life is hard, ladies. Life is hard.
It can be.
Yes, it can. How to show up for ourselves.
It's also beautiful. It's all of the things.
Yeah. Well, it can't be beautiful without the difficult. I really believe that, right? Even emotionally, right? We can't experience joy and happiness. And, you know, I've been going through that recently with my deep grief that I've been processing through. And I see so clearly that it's such a direct relation to my capacity for love, right? My capacity for joy, and feeling the joy and love and happiness, you know, comes with, you know, feeling the things on the other side as well. And it's all about really fully living, in my opinion, right? Fully being alive as a human being and being here to fulfill our purpose, which I know that you're very connected with, which has been so inspiring as well. You know, just knowing this higher knowing of I'm here to do something important and I'm magical. And, you know, the more women that actually step into that truth, it's so, it's just, makes me excited about the future and what we can create together, on this planet. Maybe turn some of this negative stuff into some positive stuff and do some good, right?
That is the whole point of living.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, to meet life on its terms and embrace it, not resist it.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So you mentioned a few things already, but I'm curious, time of recording this January, we're heading into a new year. What would you say are your biggest focuses for the new year? And I'm trying not to use the word goal because there's a lot of like stigma around the word goals sometimes, but what are your next steps really in your journey? I know you mentioned a few of them, but if you could maybe summarize or share, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, my focus is on my health. So I really do want to bring some vitality into my life. I feel like I haven't had it in decades. So breaking free from sugar has helped generate better health for sure, where I'm not in a fog and my brain isn't hijacked and I'm not so moody and I'm not wishing the world would just go away and I could stay under the duvet. So that's a really good thing. But the vitality isn't quite there yet. I tend to have low energy. So I really want to elevate that. And that is my goal or that is my path for 2023. That's what I really want, and forward from there. I'd like to be in my 80s dancing, and I'd like to be in my 80s hiking and doing all of the things because I see some people do it. For example, in September, I'm going to walk in the north of Spain, the Camino Real that goes into Santiago de Compostela. And it'll be lovely, but I would love to believe that I can do that 30 years into the future as well. I see people get sick in their 60s and go to assisted living facilities because their bodies just can't cope with their environments and they're sick. And I just don't want that to be my fate if I can avoid it. Yeah. So instead of waiting until I'm in my 60s to worry about that, now is the time. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And anyone listening here who is in their 60s, it's also not too late, right? That's a beautiful time to start this work. And I love that. I really resonate with that. That's a big part of my motivation as well, Aimee, around like just being healthy. So, I want to go hiking and travel when I'm 80 and 90 too. And maybe we'll do the trail together. Right?
That'd be wonderful.
It's so lovely. Possible.
The journey of pilgrims. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. That would be amazing. And it's so possible. And everyone listening to this, I hope that you're starting to sense that, right? That this is so possible to take back control really, and take back our power, whether it comes to our health or our relationships or our work or just the world around us. There's so much that we can do. And, a lot of it has been kept from us because, for many reasons, we're not going to go down those pathways, but, this is what we're doing here, is really waking up to our true potential and the gifts and finding peace and surrender in the ever evolving growth and evolution. This journey, I don't know, we'd have to define the journey, but I don't believe it ever ends, right? We're always learning and growing. And I'm still every year I'm learning something new about food or my relationship with myself, or, there's new challenges that arise and I get to navigate those. And, when you've got the foundation set and your toolbox, it becomes so much easier, and your support networks, right? Very important, becomes possible, right? And it actually becomes fun. I really enjoy it. A lot of the, even the really deep, heavy work that I'm doing, I love it. I'm like, that was great. Let's do that again. Crying all day. Fantastic. Sign me up.
Oh, Danny, there's enormous power in community. I just remember years ago, I was freaking out. You're going to laugh at this, but I had 2 Labradors and they were very, very hairy. So we had gigantic hairballs rolling across the foyer all the time. So I went to this Zen meditation course for 4 weeks just to try and calm down about a hairy Labradors, I'm quite serious. So we went around the room asking everyone why they were there. And there were various reasons. Some people were there in grief and some people were there just for all kinds of reasons. And then this woman said, well, she had a cat that was incontinent and she didn't know how to cope anymore with life. And it sounded funny and serious at the same time. And I thought, wow, if she's there for that reason, now I have permission to really bawl my eyes out about how stressed I am about this dog hair that's rolling all over the foyer all the time. And I suddenly felt, for the first time, I felt heard. I mean, it was a ridiculous thing to be upset about relative to other people's pain and hurt and all of that. But when everybody was able to truly express what they were feeling and nobody felt judged. It was the most wonderful gift. That's what I got out of the 4 weeks of Zen Buddhist meditation, the sense of community. It's a powerful, powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I feel so deeply, that's one of my purposes here, is creating space for that. I think especially as women, we have to get out of, like I talked about earlier, the comparison, the judgment, and
The judgment for
also
sure. Yeah.
the comparison of our problems. I catch myself that too. Like our society teaches us like, well, because we're not in a war-torn country, we can't complain about anything, right? Or we can't have our own struggles. And we really get into a hard comparison game when it comes to challenges, right? And I catch myself doing that too. Of like, well, all these people have just, lost someone they love. Who am I to complain about, hairballs and how much that's challenging me? And like all of our struggles are valid and worthy of being heard. And because they're ours. We can't compare them to someone else, right? If you're feeling pain and angst and really, having a lot of challenges with your dogs and the hair that they've got in the house, right? Like that's real for you. And who's someone else to say, right? That's gaslighting, right? Like your problem doesn't matter, Aimee. Like who, like that just gets me so fired up because it's so not true. Your problem is your problem and it's really important to you. Right. And it's obviously very emotional or challenging, and we should be supporting each other no matter what.
Yeah. In truth, the hairballs were just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was all to do with a loss of sense of control. But at the time, I just wanted someone to hear that the hairballs were really my breaking point. And it was wonderful.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that too. I'm glad, obviously, you recognize that, right? That those are just the things that, on the surface, that trigger, right? The whatever it is that's low underneath the surface, right? And getting into all that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I think that's really, really insightful and beautiful. So for anyone listening, any of the women who are listening here, maybe like resonating with some of your story, and maybe feeling a bit nervous about, jumping in and joining the next program or doing some of this inner healing in whatever way, they feel works for them. What words of wisdom or advice, do you have any words of wisdom for women who are kind of uncertain and afraid and just kind of in that space that maybe you were a little bit even before joining this program?
Oh, for sure. Don't be afraid. Just join and let your journey unfold. Don't expect that day one for you is going to be the same as day one for everybody else. It just doesn't work that way. Let your journey unfold. Some of the women in our group didn't open up until week 8, and some of them are opening up in week 2. And you don't have to feel like you have to open up at all, but you'll feel that pull after a while to start talking about your story and to make yourself want to feel heard, because so many times we join these groups and we feel, this is just the last straw and we haven't been heard and we'll just leave quietly, but we don't. We end up talking. It's such a wonderful thing. So show up and just see what unfolds. That's the best advice I can give.
Yeah. And Aimee and I'll both be there. Yeah. In the next program, we're going to be there hanging out and, supporting you. So thank you so much, Aimee. This was amazing. I want to keep chatting, but I don't want to make this too long of an episode. So I'm just so grateful. And I love that final message, right? For anyone listening, that your story matters, whether it's about hairballs or something else, right? Like your story really matters. And you deserve to be in a safe space to be heard and to be seen. Most of us weren't in our childhood. We haven't been as women in our society. This is a new way of kind of showing up for yourself, to be in this type of community and to explore and feel safe to explore, these areas under the surface, and be held in that really, is such a gift. So thank you for trusting me with that journey, Aimee.
It's been such a joy. Grateful. This has changed, really. It might sound like a cliche, but you really have changed my life. And I'm very grateful to have found you. It's been amazing.
Oh, thank you. I'm receiving all of that. Thank you, Aimee. It's equally back to you. It's been such an honor to watch the transformation. I laugh with so much love in my heart, that first call we had with the sour keys next to you and just the space that you were in. And
it was a family bag. It wasn't the individual size.
I laugh because that was me years ago too. I totally get it. And just the commitment that you made to yourself and to show up and to do things imperfectly and to trust the process. I know how difficult that is and how scary that is. So, I'm so proud of you, is what I'm saying, for doing that. And I'm so grateful to have been your guide and get to continue, supporting you and all the other women in the next program with this. So thank you for sharing your story, Aimee.
You're welcome. And I can't wait to see you in February. Have a happy 2023.
Yes. It's going to be an amazing year.
It will.
Yes.
It will.
And thank you. Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to Aimee's story. It means a lot energetically, to be heard in this way. And I know it's kind of hard on a podcast to give feedback specifically, but, please reach out to me if you have any messages for Aimee, and I'll make sure that she gets them, if you want to share anything. And yeah, hopefully some of you listening will feel the call and the pull to come and join us in February. I'll make sure the link is below this episode to come and get on the wait list, and stay tuned for when the registration opens later in January. Yeah. All right, Aimee, we'll see you in February, and everyone listening, thanks again for being here. I hope you have an amazing week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you love. And if you're ready to dive deeper into discovering your root causes and patterns that are keeping you hooked on sugar, be sure to check out our brand new free workshop series that will help you kick emotional eating for good. Find the link to download this free series and other amazing resources in the show notes below.